Welcome to the deep dive. You're here because, well, you want to understand the world of work as it keeps changing so fast.
And we're here to help with that, cutting through the noise to give you the key takeaways.
Today, we're really digging into this shift away from, the standard office, even beyond hybrid models, actually.
Yeah, towards ways of working that are much more flexible, more remote focused.
We've looked at quite a range of material for you this time.
We have things like presentations on FlexiWork, um, studies about building remote teams that actually, work,
And company culture, too, right? How important that is when everyone's spread out.
definitely. Plus employee empowerment and even some predictions about where remote work is heading long term.
So the mission here is pretty clear. Pull out the useful bits, the actionable stuff from all this.
We want you to get a good handle on how things are evolving and maybe some strategies for, well, thriving, not just surviving, especially with remote teams.
Okay, sounds good. So, where do we start this story? How did we get to this point with remote work?
Well, it's funny, we sort of take it for granted now, being able to work from anywhere.
Yeah, it feels normal.
But if you rewind a bit, the really big change, the fundamental thing, was when getting hold of work information stopped needing a specific physical place.
Ah, right. You used to have to go into the office for that file or that meeting.
Exactly. Now information is accessible pretty much anywhere you've got internet. That's the foundation everything else is built on.
And that simple shift, as our sources point out, just opened the floodgates for new ways of organizing work.
Totally. You see the rise of like digital nomads, people starting businesses virtually without a main office.
Global networks connecting teams across different countries and time zones.
Yeah, and one source used this phrase that stuck with me. Distributed by default.
Distributed by default, meaning the starting assumption is people aren't all in one place.
Precisely. The default isn't the central office anymore. And that immediately brings up the big question, doesn't it?
Which is,
How do you actually build a team that works well when everyone's scattered? How do you, trust that the work is getting done?
yes, the trust issue. That comes up constantly when you talk about remote management.
It does. And the sources we looked at really emphasize shifting focus, less about watching the clock.
And more about the results.
Exactly, being result-oriented.
Huh.
If the work quality is there and things are delivered on time where someone physically becomes much less important,
Makes sense. Focus on the output.
and tied closely to that is working transparently. That's key.
So, what does working transparently actually look like day to day?
It means actively letting people know what you're doing, sharing progress, flagging problems early, being clear about when you're available.
Using those shared tools, project boards, status updates, that sort of thing.
Yeah, basically making your work visible, even if you aren't physically visible in an office.
Okay. And practically, how do you build that connection? Video calls came up a lot.
They did. The idea is that video adds something that, text or just audio can't.
Right. You see facial expressions, body language.
Right. It helps read those nonverbal cues, makes interactions feel a bit more um, spontaneous, maybe, and it helps build stronger connections. One tip was basically, if you're unsure, just hop on a quick video call.
And there was this other concept, working out loud. How does that fit in?
So working out loud is about deliberately sharing your process, not just the final product.
Like sharing drafts or thinking through a problem in a shared channel.
Exactly. Maybe outlining your weekly goals, posting updates on tasks, asking for early feedback. It just keeps everyone kind of looped in and aware of what's happening across the team.
It's like creating those casual office check-ins, but virtually. What about those virtual office tools like Sokoko or even virtual worlds? Are people actually using those?
Well, they're maybe not mainstream everywhere yet, but the goal is interesting. They try to recreate that feeling of presence.
Seeing who's around, having those unplanned chats.
Yeah, exactly. A shared digital space for more spontaneous collaboration than just scheduled calls. It's an attempt to make the distance feel smaller, more engagingly.
But beneath all the tech and techniques, it seems like the real foundation is still pretty basic human stuff.
Absolutely. It always comes back to trust, doesn't it?
Yeah.
And the sources kept highlighting reliability.
Doing what you say you'll do.
Right. And being responsive, getting back to people promptly, and just general consistency in how you work and communicate. Without those, remote work gets really tough.
Okay, let's shift gears slightly. This idea of work-life fusion came up. What's that about?
It's acknowledging that when you work remotely, those old lines between work time and personal time get pretty blurry. They integrate more.
Like the example of workations or work holidays.
Yeah, where you might work from somewhere different, maybe a holiday spot, blending work with a change of scene. It's about that integration.
And generally, the sources seemed positive about remote work's potential for productivity and, well, freedom.
Definitely. That flexibility to manage personal stuff, appointments, family needs alongside your job. That's a huge plus for many.
But there's always a but, isn't there?
There is, and it's important. Remote work isn't some perfect solution for everyone.
Yeah, the sources were clear. It can actually highlight inequalities.
Exactly. Not everyone has a great home office setup
Yeah.
or even a quiet space to work.
And people just have different needs for social interaction. Working alone all day can be really isolating for some.
Absolutely. So it's not one size fits all.
Which brings us to the next step. Hybrid is common now, but some sources talked about remote work 3.0, fully decentralized teams. What does that look like?
The idea is moving even beyond hybrid, where there's maybe still a link to an office, towards teams that are just fully remote by design. No central hub required.
And the big implication there is hiring, right? Accessing talent anywhere,
That's the potential game changer. Tapping into a truly global talent pool. Hiring the best person for the job, period, no matter where they live.
which could have a massive impact on diversity and inclusion.
You think so? Accessing a wider range of skills, backgrounds, perspectives, it could make teams much richer, much more innovative.
And technology is obviously driving this.
Yeah.
What about the more futuristic stuff like the metaverse or VR for work?
Yeah, that's looking further ahead, but the vision is these immersive digital offices. Think beyond just a Zoom call.
Like Meta's Horizon Workrooms or Microsoft Mesh.
Exactly. Platforms aiming to create shared virtual spaces where you feel more like you're actually with your colleagues, a stronger sense of presence.
Interesting. But even with today's tech, it's already changing things significantly.
Oh, for sure. Our sources stress how current tech makes work more flexible work from anywhere, anytime. More mobile distance matters less, and even, arguably, more human.
More human? How so?
Well, think about more relaxed video calls. Seeing glimpses of people's homes or lives, integrating personal updates, it can actually foster connection sometimes.
And it's changing the kind of work we do too, with automation handling routine tasks.
Yes, freeing up brain power for more creative strategic thinking, which then influences workplace design itself. Even physical spaces are shifting towards comfort, social hubs, nature, things that support that higher level work.
Okay, another key theme, essential in any modern workplace really, but maybe even more so remotely, is empowerment. What does that mean in practice?
Empowerment, based on the sources, is really about sharing information openly, delegating tasks effectively, pushing decisions down to the people closest to the work.
And being okay with mistakes, seeing them as learning chances.
Exactly. Tolerating mistakes and creating real ownership.
Yeah.
Making people feel like it's their work, their team's success.
How do companies actually make that happen? Any practical tips?
Yeah, things like actively asking for and using employee feedback, encouraging everyone to think like an owner, like an executive in their
Taking responsibility, thinking strategically.
right, and constantly offering new challenges, chances to learn and grow.
And the payoff for doing this?
It seems pretty significant. Higher productivity, more enthusiasm, better morale, higher quality work, stronger teamwork.
Makes the company more competitive too, presumably.
Yes, and even more resilient if things change, like during restructuring, because people feel more invested and capable.
Now, there was this intriguing idea, the tribal business model. What on earth is that?
Yeah, it sounds a bit dramatic.
Yeah.
But it's basically about experimenting with organizational structures that are less like rigid hierarchies.
And more like communities.
Kind of more community-focused, encouraging employees to self-organize more, be adaptable, work together towards shared goals, almost like a tribe.
Interesting. That adaptability sounds a lot like Agile principles, which also came up.
Absolutely. There's a strong link.
Yeah.
Agile's focus on collaboration, iteration, delivering value that fits really well with making remote work successful.
So for Agile teams working remotely, what's crucial?
Easy communication is number one. Good video conferencing, reliable tech. Also, defining clear team norms, how you'll work together remotely, and consciously creating that sense of presence, even though you're apart.
Any specific tips for remote Agile teams?
A few good ones. Record meetings so people can catch up, build in continuous peer feedback, and maybe surprisingly, schedule some unstructured time.
Like virtual coffee breaks?
Yeah, just informal time to connect as people, not just about tasks. It helps replace those spontaneous office chats.
With all this change, company culture feels like it must be even more vital, especially if you're remote first.
Oh, hugely important. The sources frame it as a core part of strategy, a real competitive edge, especially when you don't have that physical office reinforcing things daily.
What kind of cultural values seem to work best in these remote settings?
Some common themes emerged. Radical transparency is a big one. High levels of trust, obviously. Individual responsibility and autonomy.
A real focus on getting things done.
Definitely. Focus, simplicity in how things operate, being resourceful, and being really impact-driven, focused on the results.
It sounds like a culture built for empowerment and results. You also mentioned a shift towards optimizing for teams,
Yes, less focus on individual stars, more on how the team performs together,
Hmm.
and really embracing asynchronous work.
meaning not everyone has to be online and working at the exact same time.
Right. Designing workflows so people can contribute effectively across different schedules and time zones without needing constant real-time meetings.
But even remotely, those core elements of good culture, openness, connection, inspiration, they still matter.
Absolutely. You still need open communication, ways for people to connect genuinely, and an environment that feels inspiring. You just have to build it differently.
Of course, it's not all smooth sailing. What are the big challenges highlighted for this next phase, this remote work 3.0?
Well, digital fatigue is a major one. Just burnout from too much screen time, too many virtual meetings. It's exhausting.
And security must be a huge headache with everyone logging in from everywhere.
A massive concern. The attack surface gets much bigger. So things like zero trust security models, basically, trust no one by default, and better authentication, like biometrics, become critical.
And the human cost? Isolation.
Yeah, that's a really serious one.
Yeah.
Companies need to actively combat potential loneliness.
How?
Investing in virtual team building that's actually engaging, not just another meeting, and focusing on wellness programs designed for remote workers' specific challenges.
This whole shift really underlines the need to be prepared, doesn't it? What was that term, remote first?
Being remote first means designing your processes assuming people can work from anywhere. It's not just allowing remote work, it's building the company around it.
So if something unexpected happens, like, I don't know, a pandemic or a major storm.
Exactly. The business can keep running smoothly. It builds resilience.
Okay, one last quick point mentioned was using social networks for engagement, like for members or donors.
Yeah, the idea there is using private networks to build community.
Mhm.
Having someone manage it, sharing useful stuff, making it interactive. It can boost connection and keep people involved, whether they're customers or team members.
Right. So wrapping this all up, the big picture is definitely a move towards much more flexibility, more remote work by default.
Yeah, and the keys to making it work seem to be building trust, communicating transparently and effectively, empowering people.
And cultivating a strong culture that fits this new way of working, focusing on results and connection wherever people are.
Exactly. The ability to build and keep strong, connected teams, no matter the geography, that's looking like the critical skill for organizations now.
So we really encourage you listening to think about how this stuff applies to you, your work, your company.
Yeah, what steps could you take? Maybe to build more trust remotely, or find a better work-life blend, or even explore more distributed ways of working.
And maybe a final thought to leave you with. Technology keeps blurring physical and digital lines.
So being adaptable, learn how to nurture great teams wherever they are, that's going to define success.
What's one thing you could do today to start embracing that future? Thanks for joining us for this deep dive.